Dear colleagues, we're on day 257 of Ukraine's heroic resistance. My name is Natalia Staroplavo. This is Mediacentru Ukraine. The Dzherelo Rehabilitation Center has become an official member of the European Association of Service Providers for Persons with Disabilities. I would like to give the floor now to Zoreslava Liulchak, director of the Dzherelo Center, to tell us more about the Rehabilitation Center and why this status is important for your organization. Hello, everyone. We have the opportunity to tell people a bit about the Dzherelo Center. This is an institution that's been in Lviv for 29 years. It combines both the public sector and the local institutions, local rehabilitation institutions. This was started by volunteers and activists, people who came to Ukraine, and the institution provides services since birth for at-risk groups, families with children with disabilities, and then also with adults with disabilities. We cover a broad spectrum of services, and since February 26th, we started helping not just the residents of Lviv, but in general people who found themselves in trouble. We did have a temporary shelter for people with disabilities and their families and people who accompany them, and those who help them move abroad or to other territories in Ukraine. Over this time, we've had over 350 people with disabilities. Also, our buses would take turn at various administrations to help people with disabilities to move to places where they were situated. In March and April, our support point started working at the Lviv train station, which included our employees. We managed to attract a lot of humanitarian aid from communities in Canada, Italy, Czechia, Latvia, and other countries, where we were trying to help people most needed help to get to those countries. We also got rehabilitation equipment, food kits, hygiene kits. We were helping both people who were staying in Lviv and the Lviv Oblast, and also in other regions of Ukraine. Over 50 organizations turned to us, and we would distribute the aid. Additionally, we've now renewed our main functionalities, and we've again opened the doors to our constant people who are constantly with us, and we've opened the door to them again. I guess that's it from me. So, like you've mentioned, the Rehabilitation Center has now gotten the official membership at the European Association of Service Providers for Persons with Disabilities. What does it mean? How will things change? How will your cooperation with other partners change? How will your work change? So, in general, there's a bit of a story behind this membership. We had people come in May to look at our work. They looked at what we do, what standards we uphold, what policies, what procedures, what protocols, to what extent does it correspond to European policies and procedures. And their next step was to offer us to become a temporary office of the European Association of Service Providers for Persons with Disabilities, and then also to become a full member. For us, it matters not only as for the center of the Dzherelo Center, but for Ukraine in general, because this has been the first time, the first membership in Ukraine at the association. We have full membership rights, voting rights. We have the rights to bring Ukrainian problems to the table as far as people with disabilities are concerned, as far as their needs are concerned. We have the opportunity to submit projects to be supported by the European Association. We can participate in trainings and offer our own trainings and share our experience. Could you tell us a bit more about what international organizations do you cooperate with? Because we're talking about it's also about you being able to exchange your experience and create various forms of exchanging your work with partners. Well, how are you working with them now? How have you been working with them now? Well, Lviv is a bit at a bit of an advantage in that we don't have these immediate. We're not under immediate hostilities, and so many people come to us to find looking for partnerships in the western regions. In April, we've had the UNICEF fund who turned to us with a partnership offer and a large crisis project of helping children with disabilities who have found themselves in crisis due to the war. And we've started implementing the project for urgent help for people with special education needs, children with special education needs, in 7 regions of Ukraine. This was Lviv, Volyn, Rivne, Ternopil, Ivano-Frankivsk, Chernivtsi, and Zakarpattia regions. The goal was to find the people, children with special needs, or perhaps with mental needs, as a result of the war that we're living through now. It's screening them, finding out their needs, looking after them, providing professional consultations and specialized services by qualified professionals, and we're implementing this project with our partner institutions. We have 7 mobile teams working in these 7 regions. We have a great partnership with rehabilitation centers in Zakarpattia, in Ternopil, Ivano-Frankivsk region, Rivne region, Chernivtsi. This is the opportunity for us to create that network, to present not just the experience of Dzherelo, but the partner institutions that are currently working in Ukraine to our European partners. And our forthcoming activities are to develop early intervention services. Perhaps this doesn't tell much to the broader public, but this is a service that helps practice preventive help for at-risk children or children with special educational needs. We don't know if we're dealing with disabilities yet, but finding them so that they find themselves in families, so that the families get this support. And the UNICEF project, as part of this UNICEF project, we'll be preparing teams, early intervention teams, who will provide these services. Another task that the Dzherelo has set itself is to create a platform for organizations of parents of children with disabilities, for them to advocate for the kind of changes that are necessary now, that are urgent now. And we are gathering NGOs into this kind of platform from all over Ukraine. Colleagues, I would like to remind you that you have the opportunity to ask questions if you have any. How has the work of the Rehabilitation Center changed during the war? Because obviously we faced different kinds of challenges, air raids, power cuts. How are you working now? How do you respond to these challenges? It was a serious challenge for us too, because again we were reopening our work in April. This was before there was any sort of stability idea of what to do. We were thinking about our procedures or how to work, because again these are children with disabilities, people with disabilities. They are hard to move sometimes. We also have transport that move people and children. But still, we reestablished our work. We developed mechanisms that we hope will be useful for others too. We're happy to share them with the findings and with the results that we have. We've managed to attract IDPs, international displaced persons who found themselves in Lviv for rehabilitation or systemic programs. And we've also hired employers who moved to the Lviv Lviv community from other areas of hostilities, because like many employers, what happened is that many of our employees moved abroad, and we had to, in order to renew our work, we had to do something about that. As far as power cuts are concerned, we hope that we're somewhat prepared, because over the past 2 years we've been preparing and thinking about energy efficiency for our centers, and we already had a diesel generator in the summer, which really helped us at this critical moment. The reason I'm talking about power cuts, I was talking about power cuts, is because some of the people with disabilities or with special needs, they are they're using various technology that needs power. How does it work today? Well, so we don't have children or people who need constant machines or apparatuses or mechanisms. But nevertheless, it's very important because if, for instance, if we have an autism spectrum children or intellectual disabilities, it's very difficult for them to be in the dark. It's very difficult for them to move into the shelters, into this kind of closed space. And so the opportunity for lighting, in more or less normal environment is extremely important for them. It's critically important for them. Nevertheless, we will continue to work in spite of everything. What sort of categories of people with disabilities do you typically work with? We don't really have limitations. Typically we work with children or adults who have been who have had disabilities since birth. So this is congenital, not acquired disabilities, or some perhaps special needs, special educational needs. It's a wide spectrum of people of various disorders of the movement apparatus, of the skeletal muscular apparatus, the autism spectrum, etc. What projects are you working on today to offer for your European partners? What are you developing today? For us, it's very important today to think about the future. We understand that there's a crisis, there's urgency, there are things we need here and now. But also for our European partners, they have to think about how they might help Ukraine in future. You know, the reconstruction, the early reconstruction, we're already talking about this. And we will be doing our best to develop the social services for people with disabilities, for children with disabilities in various areas of our lives. And also we will be members of a committee working with the European Association for Providing Services for Persons with Disabilities, who will be implementing inclusive inclusive schooling, inclusion in culture and arts. You mentioned that in the wartime you developed mechanisms that might be useful for others. What sort of experience do you think you can share today, both for the Ukrainian partners and for you could share both with Ukrainian partners and European partners to to show them what sort of developments, what sort of things to implement. So our work itself is really a series of implementations of things that work of transportation. From the moment a child takes one of our buses, whether or not there's an air raid, what do we do? So these are protocols. Where do we take them? Where do we evacuate? Up till the moment until they find themselves at an institution, what do we do? How do we go down into the shelter? Who follows whom? What should every child have with themselves? Because it's even more important for our children than children who are in ordinary schools. How do you organize leisure for these children? Because we have to put a lot of energy into organizing the time spent in the shelter. What sort of areas, how might we organize the space in the shelter to make it comfortable? Because again, if these are people with skeletal-muscular problems, they have to be moved around to different opportunities for letting them be comfortable, various bio bathrooms, because again we have shelter that may have up to 200 people, both employees and children, and we have to think about how to organize this. This is all written down sort of in documents. This can be shared. Thank you very much. To remind us, with us was Zoreslava Liulchak, head of the Dzherelo Center Rehabilitation Center. Thank you for this conversation. This has been our last briefing today. Please watch our announcements at the resources of Mediacentre Ukraine, and let's hold